National Cybersecurity Centre Cyber Essentials Requirements for IT Infrastructure version 3.1, April 2023, being read in September 2023. What's new in this version? The definition of software is updated to clarify where firmware is in scope. A statement of why asset management is important in Cyber Essentials. A link to the NCSC's Bring Your Own Device guidance is added for information. Clarification on including third-party devices. The device unlocking section is updated to reflect that some configuration can't be altered because of vendor restrictions. The malware protection section is updated. And there's new information about how using a zero trust architecture affects Cyber Essentials. Introducing the technology controls. We've organised the requirements under 5 technical controls. 1. Firewalls. 2. Secure configuration. 3. Security update management. 4. User access control. And 5. Malware protection. As the Cyber Essentials Scheme applicant organisation, it's your responsibility to make sure that your organisation meets all the requirements. You might also be required to supply evidence before your certification body can award certification at the level for which you're applying. What you should do first. Establish the boundary scope for your organisation and then determine what is in scope within this boundary. Review each of the 5 technical control themes and the controls they embody as requirements. Take the necessary steps to ensure that your organisation meets every requirement it needs for the scope you have determined. Definitions. Software includes operating systems, commercial off-the-shelf applications, plugins, interpreters, scripts, libraries, network software, and firewall and router firmware. Devices include all types of host, networking equipment, servers, networks, and end-user devices, such as desktop computers, laptop computers, thin clients, tablets, and smartphones, whether physical or virtual. Applicant refers to your organisation which is seeking certification, or sometimes the individual who is acting as the main point of contact, depending on context. A corporate VPN is a virtual private network that connects back to your office location or to a virtual or cloud firewall. You must administer the VPN so you can apply the firewall controls. Organisational data includes any electronic data belonging to your organisation, for example, emails, documents, database data, and financial data. Organisational service includes any software applications, cloud services, user interactive desktops, and mobile device management solutions that your organisation owns or subscribes to. For example, web applications, Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, mobile device management containers, Citrix Desktop, virtual desktop solutions, or IP telephony. A subset is part of the organisation whose network is segregated from the rest of the organisation by a firewall or VLAN. Servers are devices that provide organisational data or services to other devices as part of your organisation's business. Licensed and supported software is software that you have a legal right to use and that the vendor is committed to support by providing regular updates or patches. The vendor must provide the future date when they will stop providing updates. Note that the vendor doesn't need to have created the software originally, but they must be able to now modify the original software to create updates. Scope. Scope overview. Your assessment and certification should cover the whole of the IT infrastructure used to carry out your organisation's business, or if necessary, a well-defined and separately managed subset. Either way, you must clearly define the scope boundary, namely the business unit managing it, the network boundary and physical location. You must agree the scope with the certification body before assessment begins. A subset can be used to define what is in scope or what is out of scope for your Cyber Essentials certification, but please note, organisations that choose a scope which includes their whole IT infrastructure achieve the best protection and maximise their customers' confidence. The requirements apply to all devices and software in scope and which meet any of these conditions. Can accept incoming network connections from untrusted internet-connected hosts. can establish user-initiated outbound connections to devices via the Internet, control the flow of data between any of the above devices and the Internet. A scope that doesn't include end-user devices isn't acceptable. Asset management and cyber essentials. Asset management isn't a specific cyber essentials control, but effective asset management can help meet all 5 controls, so it should be considered as a core security function. Most business operations depend on some aspect of asset management, and cybersecurity shouldn't be considered in isolation or as the primary consumer of asset information. These functions include IT operations, financial accounting, managing software licenses, procurement and logistics. They may not all need the same information, but there will be overlaps and dependencies between the respective requirements. Integrating and coordinating asset management across your organization will help reduce or manage any conflicts between these functions. Effective asset management doesn't mean making lists or databases that are never used. It means creating, establishing, and maintaining authoritative and accurate information about your assets that enables both day-to-day operations and efficient decision-making when you need it. In particular, it will help you track and control devices as they're introduced into your business. The NCSC has comprehensive guidance for organisations on asset management. Figure 1 shows the scope of the requirements for IT infrastructure. Bring your own device. In addition to mobile or remote devices owned by the organisation, user-owned devices which access organisational data or services as defined above are in scope. However, all mobile or remote devices used only for the purposes of native voice applications, native text applications, multi-factor authentication applications are out of scope. Traditionally, user devices were managed centrally, which ensured consistency across the organisation. Certifying security controls in this way is more straightforward as there's a standard builder reference. Bring your own device complicates matters as users are given more freedom to customize their experience, making consistent implementation of the controls more challenging. Using the organizational data and services definitions to enforce strong access policies should remove some of this ambiguity. For further information and advice on the use of Bring Your Own Device, please use the NCSC's guidance. Home working. Our default approach is that all corporate or Bring Your Own Device home working devices used for your organization's business are in scope for cyber essentials. If your organization gives the home worker a router, that router is then also in scope. All other routers are out of scope, which means you need to apply Cyber Essentials firewall controls, such as a software firewall on users' devices. If the home worker is using a corporate VPN, their internet boundary is on the company firewall or virtual cloud firewall. Wireless devices. Wireless devices, including wireless access points, are in scope if they can communicate with other devices via the internet, out of scope if it's not possible for an attacker to attack directly via the internet. The Cyber Essentials scheme isn't concerned with attacks that can only be launched within the signal range of the wireless device. Out of scope if they are part of an ISP router at the home location. Cloud services. If your organization's data or services are hosted on cloud services, these services must be in scope. For cloud services, the applicant organization is always responsible for ensuring all controls are implemented, but some of the controls can be implemented by the cloud service provider. Who implements which control depends on the type of cloud service. We consider 3 different types of cloud service. Infrastructure as a service, IaaS. The cloud provider delivers virtual servers and network equipment that, much like a physical equipment, the organization configures and manages. Examples of IaaS include Rackspace, Google Compute Engine, or Amazon EC2. Platform as a service, PaaS. The cloud provider delivers and manages the underlying infrastructure, and your organization provides and manages the applications. Examples of PaaS include Azure Web Apps and Amazon Web Services Lambda. Software as a service, SaaS. The cloud provider delivers applications, and your organization then configures the service. You must still make sure that the service is configured securely. Examples of SaaS include Microsoft 365, Dropbox, and Gmail. Who implements the controls will vary, depending how the cloud service is designed, and the table below explains who might typically be expected to implement each control. In cases where the cloud provider implements one of the controls on your behalf, you must make sure that the cloud provider is committed to implementing this via contractual clauses or documents referenced by contract, such as security statements or privacy statements. Cloud providers will often explain how they implement security in documents published in their trust centers, referencing a shared responsibility model. Accounts used by third parties and managed infrastructure. All accounts your organization owns are in scope, even when those accounts are used by a third party, such as a supplier, contractor, or managed service provider, to manage or support your infrastructure. If you're using externally managed services, such as remote administration, you must be able to confirm that the Cyber Essentials technical controls are being met and be able to demonstrate this in your assessment answers. Devices used by third parties. All end-user devices your organization owns that are loaned to a third party must be included in the assessment scope. For devices not owned by your organization, the table below explains what is in and out of scope. For devices out of scope of the assessment, your organization is still responsible for confirming that the devices interacting with organization services and data are configured correctly. It's up to you how to achieve this, as it falls outside of the scope of the assessment scope. Web applications. Publicly available commercial web applications, rather than apps developed in-house, are in scope by default. Bespoke and custom components of web applications are out of scope. The best way to mitigate vulnerabilities in applications is robust development and testing in line with commercial best practice, such as the OWASP Application Security Verification Standards. Requirements by technical control theme. Firewalls applies to boundary firewalls, desktop computers, laptops, routers, servers, IaaS, PaaS, SaaS. Aim: to make sure that only secure and necessary network services can be accessed from the Internet. Introduction: all devices run network services to allow them to communicate with other devices and services. By restricting access to these services, you reduce your exposure to attacks. You can do this using firewalls or network devices with firewall functionality. For cloud services, you can achieve this using data flow policies. A boundary firewall is a network device which can restrict the inbound and outbound network traffic to services on its network of computers and mobile devices. It can help protect against cyber attacks by implementing restrictions known as firewall rules, which can allow or block traffic depending on its source, destination, and type of communication protocol. Alternatively, if your organization doesn't control the network to which your device connects, you must configure a software firewall on the device. This works in the same way as a boundary firewall, but only protects the single device on which it's configured. This approach allows for more tailored rules and means that the rules apply to the device wherever it's used. But you should note that this creates a greater administrative overhead when managing firewall rules. This document will be completed in a second video.